The CB09 blade is widely regarded as one of the best blades to be able to use with your Silhouette Cameo or Cricut devices. Many people don't want to use this blade because they think that it's a very complicated setup. I bought mine a little bit too long ago and it's been lying in my craft room for that exact reason, but I've recently tackled it and found that it was actually far easier than I thought it was. So I wanted to make this video to show you that you'll be able to set it up just as easily as what I did and also provide you with some assets to help you set yours up too. The reason why people use the CB09 blade as opposed to the premium blade or the auto blade, number one, especially for the Cameo 4, some of the auto blades have many problems and they don't correctly register and they don't cut correctly. And with the premium blades, they are great, they do last a really long time, but the CB09 can get better cuts and it'll be much cheaper in the long run. The one downside to the CB09 is that because it's an all-metal blade, it is quite heavy. This weighs in at around 150 grams, and many people know that using this blade technically voids your warranty because the normal blades weigh around 50 grams, so this is of course about 3 times heavier, which means that putting that additional weight in your carriage and having the constant up and down that what we do when we're cutting does mean that it could potentially wear out your Cameo a little faster. So I would think very carefully before using it in a brand new machine. If you have a machine that's outside of warranty, then you are perfectly fine to use this, but I just wanted to add that disclaimer that it may affect your machine in the long run. I'm unfortunately not an engineer, I haven't developed the Cameos, so I can't say the exact repercussions that your machine will face while using this blade, but it might be worth it anyway. Well, let's hop into setting it up. My name is Kelly, and let's get clacking. One of the most useful things to have on your CB09 blade is something that we are used to on all of our other blades, and that is a depth indicator. So I have this depth indicator here that I got from another website. I'll share a link in the description. What I did was I modified it slightly as it didn't quite suit the needs that I wanted it for, and I'm going to be sharing this template with you guys. So this is the exact size that you'll need to print it out. I'm printing this out on an A4 sheet of Snippy Sisters printable matte vinyl that I've just cut in half, so it's now A5, so I can waste a little bit less. And I've already done 2 of them, so which you can see there. So I'm just going to be printing it a little bit lower than what I need, just to be sure that I'm using the right size. The link to this file will be in the description. So we're just going to go File, Print. Like we always do, we check the settings to make sure that it's A5, and then we can go Print, and then we just print the page. Setting up the CB09 blade really isn't all that daunting. The CB09 blade comes with 3 different blades. We have the blue one, the red one, and the yellow one. The blue one, which is the one that we're going to be setting up today, is the 60-degree blade, which is measured from the ground up, so it's at a 60-degree angle like that. And this one is typically used with your finer substrates. Maybe you could use it for paper, you can use it for crepe paper, those kinds of things. The red blade is the one that we would typically use for vinyl. It is a 45-degree blade, so from the ground 45 degrees up. It's typically used for vinyl, but it can be more of an all-purpose blade as well. Then we have the 30-degree blade, typically used for your heavier items. Think like leather, those kinds of things that are a little bit tougher to cut. And with this particular model of the CB09 blade, I have to use the spring because of the way that this blade is designed. Setting up your blade is quite easy. So what we do is we take the blade, we take off the little blue cap, which is protecting the sharp part of the blade, untwist the black part. Now, depending on whether your CB09 uses the spring or not, if it doesn't use the spring, you will insert the blade into the cap. But because mine does use the spring, it's easier to insert the blade into the actual housing and then put the spring over it. Once that's done, you just simply screw the cap back on. And depending on whether you need to change the blade or not, you shouldn't have to unscrew that. The next step is setting up the blade at the correct depth. A lot of people think that this is quite daunting, but it's really quite simple if you know the basics. What we're going to do is we're going to turn the blade completely so that there is nothing coming out of the bottom. You can run your finger across it or your nail across it and it won't hook on anything. So what you want to do is to turn it slightly, not very much, till you can feel the blade at the end there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of vinyl and we're going to put the blade down, face down, and we're going to draw a line down the vinyl. Now I think my blade might be out a little bit too far, so I'm going to pull up the vinyl. Okay, so it cut beautifully. I'm going to pull up that side, and you probably won't be able to tell, but this has actually gone quite far, so I might need to just turn the blade back a tiny bit. As we can see there, how you can actually see it is cut into the paper quite deep. So we know that the blade is out just a little bit too far. So we're just going to twist it back a tiny bit and we're going to test again. I wouldn't suggest using too much force when it comes to this. You want to just put enough force so the blade catches the vinyl and pulls through. Okay, that also looks good. Cut fine. Pull up the other side. Almost not gone through the paper. So what I might do is I might turn it back a fraction just so that we have a little bit of the depth right. It barely even felt like I moved anything, but we can test a third time. Essentially what we want to do is we want to have a slight indentation on the bottom of the vinyl, but not enough so that it actually cuts the backing paper. Okay, that felt much better. Okay, there. So we have a slight indentation on the backing paper, and that is perfect for where I want this setting to be. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the section that we printed out, and I've already cut this, but when we're cutting it, we want to place the ruler right at the bottom of the numbers so that you're cutting a fraction of a millimeter underneath the numbers. And then what you want to do when you're cutting the top section is you want to actually just kind of cut the top of the little lines off so that the lines are all on the edge, and then you cut just next to the O and then also just next to the 10. So we're going to lift this off the paper and we're going to stick it down onto the blade. If you are doing this correctly the first time, it doesn't matter where you place this on the device. You can place it down there, anywhere. I messed up the filming just for a change. So what I did was I had to redo everything. So I'm going to be placing that line in line with the number 1. But like I mentioned, when it comes to you don't have to worry about lining that line up and the number 1 up. You can just stick it down anywhere, because then you will be doing this step next, which is to use a Sharpie. So you take your Sharpie, and then what you've done is once you've stuck it down, you take your Sharpie in line with number 1 and you just pull your Sharpie on the groove section there. So you know exactly where number 1 is. If you don't have a Sharpie, you can use a tiny little piece of vinyl, but I find that the Sharpie lasts a little bit longer because Sharpies can pretty much draw on anything, so it might last a little bit longer. The vinyl doesn't really like to be stuck down on this metal, so I would recommend trying the Sharpie as well. I hope it works for you. But that's essentially you having set up your CB09. Now what you can do is if you have, slightly thicker materials, you can use number 2. Or if that doesn't quite work, you can put it to 2.5 or 5.5 or even all the way up to 10. And then you can bring it all the way back down to number 1. So now you have your blade set up, and it's quite literally as simple as that. If you don't like the idea of changing it every time, I wouldn't recommend putting it back on 0 every time you change the blade. Just like your other blades, you can just leave it on 1, leave it in the housing, and just keep cutting like that. What I've actually done with my blades is I have one for vinyl. As you can see there, I've actually cut out the word vinyl and stuck it on there. So then this one will be my paper blade. So I will do the same as what I did with this. Instead of the vinyl, I will write paper. And then I have another one, which will be leather. So this one, I will do the same with leather, and I'll write leather on this one. So I will have one paper blade, one vinyl blade, and one leather blade. So thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel for more of these kinds of tutorials in the future, and I hope to see you in the next video. And remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon.